In this video, we are going to look at 7 production level tips to make your film more cinematic and appealing to your audience. These tips are not in order of importance. They are all important to add production value, or PV, to your film. This video is not meant to be a how-to for all of these tips. We will follow up with more detailed videos on each of these topics. We're trying to get you to think of all these disciplines every time you film and not skip any of them. These tips are more important than you having the latest 12K camera. Besides, the audience will never see your cool new camera anyway. These are examples of what to do and what not to do to give your film added cinematic look and higher production value. These tips are basic and need to be followed religiously. The competition for viewers is intense. You need to hook up your viewer right away, or they'll move on to the next YouTube clip or the next Netflix top 10. When I started out, I thought good lighting was attained when the scene was well lit. That's true, but not how I thought it was meant. There's rom-com lighting where you have everything evenly lit with no shadows, and there's cinematic lighting where the scene, actors, props are lit according to the mood of the scene and or the film. This is usually called the lighting ratio, typically the ratio between the key light and the fill light on the talent. There are a whole series of YouTube videos available from Aperture Lighting. We're not sponsored by them, but they'd be a great source to get you going in the right direction if you need help, and they have excellent, moderately priced gear. A well-lit scene is what both your camera sees and what your viewers see. Establishing shots let the audience know where the scenes are taking place. You can use a drone for broad brush establishing, where they will help the audience feel comfortable with the setting where the scene is taking place. You can also use them to walk your viewer into the scene, literally and figuratively, like wading into a pool. Drone shots can work for transitions to establish traveling and change of venue. And don't forget, they can be used by the editor as transitions between scenes. Be careful though, don't overuse any specialty gear. There's such a thing as too much of a good thing. The viewer quickly finds out how fascinated you are with your gear if you overuse a technique. Use drones and your other gear when they make sense and advance and motivate the scene and the movie. Don't use them just because you brought them along. They're like spices in cooking. Use them sparingly. When shooting your film, think of how it will edit and view it through the eyes of the viewer. Try to have people or objects, trees, cars, buildings, etc. in the foreground to give your shots a cinematic depth. Stationary objects in the foreground while your talent is moving will emphasize their movement and be more engaging. A wide lens will give the viewer a ground level establishing shot. Camera setups. Wide and extra wide shots can make good establishing shots. If possible, have something in the foreground and have some camera movement from a gimbal or a slider. Avoid zooms as it's unnatural and distracting in most cases. Go ahead and use handheld when it works. Mix up your close-ups to help keep your audience engaged and according to the emotions of the scene. Ultra close-ups are popular these days, but be careful using them. They can be distracting for the audience, and again, use them when there is motivation. Otherwise, that ultra close-up might be distracting for your viewer. Shallow depth of field is a great tool to bring viewers' focus where you want it to emphasize and engage or re-engage the viewer by pulling focus manually or via your autofocus. Depth of field comes from setting your camera to a lower numerical f-stop. A little bokeh is great too. Set it and forget it. Most everything Hollywood puts out is at 24 frames per second. Set it and put your attention to other elements of your film. Of course, if you have action scenes or rapid movement, you can shoot at a higher frame rate, and slow-mo is also a great touch. Again, if used when it makes sense to advance the mood of the scene. You can use your post-production time to help adjust the speed too. In the start of the new decade, we now have choices. 2K, 4K, 8K, and now 12K, all on handheld cameras that are relatively affordable to buy or rent. Like my older brother always said about hot rods, speed costs. How fast do you want to go? Remember, the viewer will not be able to see much difference above 2K, and there is a limit to what the talent wants the viewer to see in those high-res close-ups. I think we all know the importance of being able to hear the dialogue. That's been pounded into our heads a lot. It doesn't matter whatever else your film has if the viewer can't hear it. And pay close attention to the quality of that dialogue. It is absolutely critical that you have music in your film that fits and sets the mood of your film or scene. There are countless sources of music available to your film that are affordable and accessible. Storyblocks is our go-to source for music and sound effect. Check them out. Don't make a common mistake and have your heart set on music that you can't license. We're not at a place yet where you can license your favorite music. I think we're getting closer, but we're not there yet. Also, don't frustrate yourself with original soundtracks. You probably want to hire a member of your local band to write it. They already have a real job in addition to playing local clubs and probably no experience writing for films. That's probably not going to work. I've seen a lot of films that never see the light of day because their heart was set on an original soundtrack. Ask your editor to insert royalty-free licensed music as scratch music to help set the mood until you add the icing on the cake with your collaborative choices. This is going to take longer than you think to get consensus from everyone. Audio effects. When you're near a final cut, keep your ear tuned to what you don't hear in your movie. What's missing from most indie films is the sound of everyday life. After quiet on the set, we forget to add back in the sounds of life around us, and there's often a lot of awkward silence to be heard. We often wonder why the dialogue sounds lifeless. It wasn't the actor's fault. Remember creaking hinges, car doors closing, radios in the background, ambulance sirens, dogs barking in the distance, birds, passing cars. If you were shooting a group scene, restaurant, club, gathering, post-COVID virus of course, add the background chatter or additional sounds in post. Also, don't forget to record some room tone from each scene for the editor. They'll appreciate it long after the filming is over. Don't forget about bumpers and stingers too. Stock footage and B-roll. Do not forget the importance of stock footage in your film. Some filmmakers think it's cheating if they use stock footage. But if you watch the end of the credit roll of most Hollywood movies, you'll find credits for stock footage used in your favorite films. It can be invaluable in opening and closing scenes to establish your film location, mood, genre, etc. We frequently use stock footage in those instances and to fill in scenes that were missed during filming or where there was a gap of some kind that needed to be filled in edit. Set design. Paying attention to set design is equally important to giving the viewer a good experience. All too often, this is an area of production that is an afterthought. Make sure your set is well equipped and not bare. If you are in a kitchen, make sure it looks like someone lives there and have items of everyday life. If there's a slacker living there or pets, show it. Have items in the scene that express and advance the story, the personality of the character, their hobbies, their quirks, etc. The viewer must believe what they are seeing or the magic is lost. Thanks for tuning in to Indie Movie Magic. Please hit the like button and subscribe. Please let us know what we can do better in the comments section and if there is something you would like to see us add to our channel. Thanks again.